everyone, and warmly welcome to the new Alpine A110 channel. We hope to take you through every aspect about wanting the Alpine, reserving the Alpine, ordering the Alpine, waiting for the Alpine, which I'm doing right now, and getting it delivered, taking it out on road trips, racing it, ice racing it, upgrading it maybe. I'm so much looking forward to this experience, and as you see, this is sort of the parking spot where the Alpine should be, but it's not quite there yet. By the end of March or early April, they have promised me it will be delivered. And who am I, you might ask? Well, I'm just another complete car nut, which I've been since birth, or at least since I got my first Matchbox Lamborghini car at about 3 years of age. I have a day job in the finance industry. Well, it pays the bills, but it can be a little bit dry sometimes. So to spice things up a bit, I've spent some 10 to 20% of my time working as a freelance journalist, focusing on cars and motorcycles during the last 15 years. This magazine was the one that I participated most in. In my view, it was fantastic, focusing on sports cars and sporty cars and upgrading and stuff like that. But too few people thought like us, and it died a couple of years ago. Since then, it has mostly been writing in customer magazines published by manufacturers such as the Porsche magazine, the Audi magazine, and I've also been writing some motorcycle stuff in Bike magazine Sweden, especially when it comes to adventure riding and off-road. For those of you who are interested in motorcycles, well, I run a motorcycle channel as well. It's called Gas-O-Loon, and it is available on YouTube, of course. Writing as a freelance journalist has given me plenty of opportunities to drive many interesting cars in great places on the press launches that you get invited to. Some exotic sports cars and many cars at all that I would have never been able to afford myself. For instance, here you see a fully unbiased journalist in action. He's not enjoying any free drinks, he's not staying in nice hotels, but of course diligently fulfilling his duty to test the automotive products. One really good thing about this is you often get to leave Sweden in the winter, which is pretty cold and grey, for southern Spain or South Africa or other exciting places, and you can participate in a press launch of a cool Porsche, BMW, Audi, etc. I really enjoyed it. However, I tend to do less and less of that work now, as magazines cannot always afford freelance writers, or maybe they just got sick of me and my writing. I don't know. Apart from the testing, I've also owned a lot of sports cars and other performance cars, usually old and requiring a lot of maintenance, like this 993. All in all, I have owned 4 old 911s before the prices went totally crazy some 5, 6, 7 years ago. So, and that includes two G-Series SCs from the 80s, a 964 and a 993. I also owned a Boxster. A Boxster actually with a 3.6 liter engine in it, so there was plenty of oomph in that car. All the cars that I have owned have been pretty old, since I really couldn't afford the nicest examples, and the process of owning them has been cool and rewarding, but sometimes much more expensive than I had anticipated. All in all, I think the coolest car that I have ever owned was probably this Porsche 964 Carrera 2, which I made into an RS replica. And you can see this little film clip here when we snow drifted it a couple of years ago. Ja, till och med Peter kan köra av den. I also had a couple of M BMWs, like the 1M, the M2, and well, the M135i, Opel Speedster, and many other cars. Most of it pretty nutty stuff. During these years, I've come to be less and less interested in extreme pace or grip.
although that is exactly what the manufacturers give us more and more of these days. Roads are getting more and more busy, and owning a sports car can be nothing but frustration. You can never really unleash the power it has, and if you would soon reach speeds that would send you to jail. Another thing is that the grip is so strong that you have to be beyond insane to really try to unstick the rear and sort of play with the grip of the car in traffic. I think one of the best examples of this is the BMW M1 and M2 cars. I owned both of them a couple of years ago. Many seem to love these cars, and of course I like them too. They are both fast, they look great, but strangely I soon lost interest in both of them. I tend to enjoy a car that really feels special and like it puts a smile on my face even during everyday driving. And that means like driving within speed limits, or at least within speed limits plus VAT. Both these Beamers had pretty numb steering, the engine note was really nothing special and exotic despite them having 6 cylinders. After selling the BMW 1M, I found some real fun in a place where I didn't really expect to. At less than 1/10 of the price of the BMW, I basically just bought a cheap car for my winter commute, and it proved to be sort of the antithesis of the BMW and one of the greatest little cars that I have ever owned, let alone driven. It was a Panda, the Fiat Panda 100 HP, which is a Panda with a 100 horsepower engine. You can hear that in the name. It was a really light car with a rorty little gem of an engine, surprisingly good chassis. It's not very fast, but it feels twice as fast as it really is. You always floor the throttle everywhere. I also put the track-focused BMW 323 Ti E36 model with a 2.8 liter engine together. At one point I spent shitloads of money on that car, making it ready for track work. But once it was finished, I realized there would not be much time for track work in the coming years, and sold it. Now I had a Golf R. On a normal road, that sweet chassis really soaks up everything and gives you confidence like no other car. On track it works, but it's not ideal. It will start to understeer. Still, I'm really looking to buy a purpose-built sports car. I haven't owned that for some time. All these old 911 are now too expensive, and you know, buying a new 911 or anything close to new at like 150,000 euros, it's just too steep for me. I'm not there. So when the Porsche 718 Cayman was launched a couple of years ago, I was really excited because I saw that even the base model, the non-S version, would have 300 horses and accelerate around 5 seconds, which is plenty enough for performance for me. So I thought that might be the solution. I tried both the S actually, and I also went to Porsche test drive on the GTS version, and I have to say that the handling is great. Steering is fantastic, it looks neat, the quality is superb, but you know, that engine note, that boxer 4-cylinder engine that Porsche put in it. When I closed the door on that car, I was left wanting something else. Something small, light, agile, with a sweet chassis that could be used every day. Something unique. Then, like 1.5 years ago, the Alpine A110 was presented in Geneva. It was the first time we saw how the final car would look. I'd seen some spy photos before and stuff like that, but now the car was there in the flesh, and wow, it really looked cool, and the specs also seemed very promising with lightweight, etc. I had no clue, actually, ashamed to say, about the rally routes of the previous A110 in the 60s and 70s. As you can see here in the video, you know, it's a real dancer. Also note how neatly the drivers Scandinavian flick the cars before each bend. It's really impressive. Apparently it won by being lighter and more nimble than competing more powerful cars. My relation to Alpine was rather from the 1980s and early 90s when Renault sold this car. It was sort of a sub-brand. It looked really cool. It used some V6 engines. I think they were co-produced with Volvo. Some of them had some turbos which gave decent performance, but anyway, the brand died in the mid 1990s in the wake of economic crisis and also of course strong competition from other brands. I have never driven an Alpine sports car in my life. Hell, I don't even think I've ever seen one live, at least not here in Sweden. What I did know is that although most people in the Nordics where I live associate Renault with you know, small second cars like cheap Clios with private leasing deals and stuff like that, 100% focused on value for money, there have always been RS models around, and they are really good, much better than a lot of people know. I owned the Clio RS a couple of years ago, and it was a hoot, you know, light and with a strong engine, sweet chassis, attention to detail. Look at this rim that I'm holding in this picture. It was so light, small. I believe it was a small forged rim, so they really knew their stuff already then. And never forget how good the last generation Renault Megane RS was. It was an extremely capable car. I think a lot of car people don't know how good it is. It's got only slightly over 250 horsepower. But if you, for instance, look at places like the Nürburgring Nordschleife, you see that there are Meganes everywhere and they are fast as hell. So apparently the people in Dieppe, where both the RS Renaults and now also the Alpine are made, they really know, they are really good chassis engineers, they know their engines, they know how to put a good sports car together. That was clear for me. Anyway, now Alpine got my attention, and the big moment, of course, was about a year ago at the first press launch. Designing a new car with a blank sheet of paper is one thing, but will it be truly special? I remember the Alpha 4C that was launched in 2013. Everything looked so promising, with a carbon tub, lightweight and everything. But after a short initial hype, the reception turned out surprisingly cool, as the dynamics of the car didn't really work. The date of the launch then came last autumn. Unfortunately, I was no longer representing any media that was invited, so I listened to the colleagues from around the world drop their views about the car. People were blown away.
So in a word, the A110 is brilliant. And the world of sports cars should learn a thing or two from this car. And the key lesson is that power and torque are not necessarily the holy grail when it comes to the pursuit of pure driver satisfaction. What a car, and what a return to form from France's most iconic sports car brand. Porsche and the rest of them should be worried, well and truly worried.
Perhaps a more obvious rival for the £50,000 Alpine is Porsche's 718 Cayman. The chassis on the Porsche is sublime and the option of a manual gearbox is lovely, but given the choice, I'd have the Alpine. It is that good. But this is not just a good car, it's an important car, because for the first time in a long time the manufacturer has chosen not to pursue pure performance as its outright metric, not to chase straight line speed. They've chosen something else. They've chosen driver involvement, a car that's enjoyable all the time. This really could mark something of a watershed for performance cars.
What appealed most to me from all these reviews was the low weight, 1,100 kilos wet with all fluids, fully fueled up. It's so impressive, and about 300 kilos less than a Porsche Cayman. It's fantastic. And also the suppleness of the suspension, of course, and the uniqueness of the entire package. It seems to be something completely different than the competing cars. Such a breath of fresh air in the sports car industry as a whole. I think one magazine journalist that I read his text, he apparently put the question to the Alpine manager or some development engineer, and the question was, how fast is this car around the Nürburgring Nordschleife? And the answer was, we don't care. Did you have fun? I jumped on the opportunity and called Renault Sweden for an immediate reservation, which was not possible. They didn't really know whether they were supposed to launch the Alpine in Sweden, and the first 2,000 cars, or I think it was 1955 cars, in the première edition, we didn't get any of them here, and I thought about reserving it in another country, but that proved too complex and blah blah. Anyway, last spring it was finally decided that we would get this car too, And I got this app you have to get to reserve a car, and I think a couple of days after the reservation app functionality opened, I reserved, and I think I'm number 2 or 3 in Sweden on the list. I also called a couple of friends who I do a lot of motorcycle and car related activities with. I also told them to jump on this opportunity, and they did. Once signed up, the waiting started. Of course, I followed very closely what people thought of the car around Europe. Often press launches, they only provide a couple of hours of driving, and it's hard to get a full impression. But the hype would not go away, rather the praise would not stop. Just listen to this.
Because this car is absolutely fan-bleeding-tastic, trust me.
On the plus side, well, where do you start? I think it's the dynamics of it, the freshness, the newness of it, the way that it's so focused on that weight, and how that weight has then been translated into a glorious car to drive and to live with. And the fact it's sort of usable and normal means I will use this as an everyday car as well as my sort of weekends plaything sports car. I love the performance. I think it's really well judged. I adore how it does crazy MPG, and therefore you've got a big range, and it's feels like cheating the system.
So finally, after about 7 months of waiting, I got a call from Bilia Stockholm, which is a big retailer here, and they will be the sole retailer of Alpine for the Nordics. And they called me and said, it's time to spec your car. And in the next episode, my Alpine journey will truly start by visiting the dealer and setting the final specification of my car. There are many questions that will arise here. What color should you choose? Which rims? Should you go for the forged ones or the cast ones, which might look better? Do I really need the aluminium pedals? Is the extra cabin storage for me? Blah blah blah. Join me in episode 2 and all these questions will be answered. See you soon!